Robert is 71, and by his own account he feels fine. He eats a good dinner, usually around 8:30, once the day has finally slowed down. A proper meal, rice, a bit of meat, maybe something fried, because at 71 you've earned the right to enjoy your food. He takes his blood pressure tablet in the morning, the way he's taken it for 15 years. He keeps the bedroom warm because his wife runs cold, and he stopped drinking water after dinner because getting up twice a night to use the bathroom was wearing him out. Every one of those choices feels sensible. Every one of them Robert made for a reason. And if you'd asked him which of his evening habits had anything to do with his heart, he'd have looked at you like you'd asked him a trick question. Here's the thing this video is about. Your heart doesn't clock off when you fall asleep. It shifts into a different gear. And after 60, that gear has fewer safety margins than it used to. What you do in the 2 or 3 hours before you switch off the light quietly sets the conditions for the 8 hours that follow. So over the next few minutes, I want to walk through 5 evening habits that cardiologists genuinely pay attention to in older patients. 4 of them hold up well, and one of them, one that's all over YouTube right now, repeated by very confident-sounding narrators, turns out to rest on evidence that has largely fallen apart. I'll show you exactly where, and I'll show you the studies, because on this channel, we don't ask you to take anyone's word for it, including mine. One promise before we start, and I'm going to repeat it more than once, because it's the single most important sentence in this video. Nothing you hear tonight is a reason to change, stop, add, or retime any medication on your own. Not one pill, not by 1 hour. If something here raises a question, the answer is a 2-minute conversation with your own doctor or pharmacist, not a decision made from your armchair. Hold on to that, we'll come back to it. Before the 5 habits, let me explain why the night is even a topic, because the reason is real, even though the scary versions of it get exaggerated. Here's what's actually established. Your cardiovascular system doesn't switch off when you sleep, it shifts into a lower gear. In a healthy body, blood pressure is meant to fall overnight. That 10 to 20% dip I mentioned, your heart rate slows and your vessels relax. Think of it as a nightly maintenance window, a stretch of hours when the system does quieter repair work at a lower workload. Your body has been running that cycle your whole life. What changes after 60 is not that the maintenance window disappears, but that the margins around it get thinner. Arteries tend to stiffen with age. Blood pressure regulation gets a little less precise. The automatic adjustments that used to happen smoothly happen a bit more roughly. During the day, that's usually fine. Your body has plenty of backup, plenty of ways to compensate when something asks a bit more of it. The point worth understanding is that at night, some of that spare capacity is simply doing less. So a stress that your daytime system would shrug off can matter a little more when it lands in the small hours. And here's the piece that's genuinely supported by decades of data. The hours around waking, roughly the early morning, as your body transitions from sleep to being upright and active, are a well-documented peak time for heart attacks and strokes. Not because mornings are cursed, but because that shift from rest to activity puts a predictable demand on the system at a moment when it's ramping back up. You'll notice I'm being careful with the wording there. I'm not going to tell you, as some videos do, that midnight to 6 is a guaranteed danger zone with mathematical precision. I'm telling you what the research actually shows. The transition around waking carries a real, measurable increase in risk, and that's the honest version. Why does any of that matter for tonight? Because what happens in those thinner margin hours is shaped, in part, by decisions you make while you're still awake. The meal, the medication, the room, the glass of water. That's the whole premise. Not fear, just the sensible idea that if the night is when your heart has a little less slack, the evening is a good time to stop making its job harder than it needs to be. Now, a quick 30-second self-check before we get into the 5 habits. This one you can do sitting exactly where you are. I want you to honestly answer 5 quick yes or no questions. Keep a mental tally or grab a scrap of paper. 1. In the last week, did you eat a large or heavy meal within about 2 hours of going to bed? Yes or no? 2. Do you know, actually know, not assume, what time of day you're supposed to take your blood pressure medication and why? Yes or no? 3. Has anyone ever told you that you snore loudly or that you seem to stop breathing or gasp in your sleep? Or do you wake up tired even after a full night with a dry mouth or a morning headache? Yes or no? 4. Do you deliberately avoid drinking anything in the evening so you won't have to get up at night? Yes or no? 5. Is your bedroom noticeably too warm or genuinely cold when you sleep? Yes or no? Count your yeses. If you got 2 or 3, you're completely normal. Most people do. This isn't a test you fail, it's just a map of which of the next 5 sections is worth your full attention. Keep your number in your head. Let's take them one at a time. The 5 habits. Habit 1, the late heavy dinner. Let's start with Robert's 8:30 dinner, because it's the most common one. When you eat a large meal, your body does something quite demanding. Blood flow is redirected toward your digestive system, your heart pumps a little harder to keep up, and the fats in your bloodstream, triglycerides, rise over the next few hours. During the day, that's business as usual. Your body handles it without you noticing. The question is, what happens when you ask your heart to do that heavy digestive work at the exact moment it's also trying to wind down for the night? You've essentially scheduled 2 competing jobs for the same shift. Now here's where I'll be straight with you about the strength of the evidence, because this is where those other videos overreach. Studies do link eating late, especially large meals close to bedtime medias, with higher blood pressure overnight and with more acid reflux, and reflux can produce chest discomfort that feels alarmingly like a heart problem. That association is real, and it's reasonably well documented. What I'm not going to tell you is that a late dinner will give you a heart attack, because that specific dramatic claim goes further than the research supports. The honest version is milder and still useful. A big meal late at night makes your cardiovascular system work when it would rather be resting. And for an older heart with stiffer arteries, easier is better than harder. The fix costs you nothing. Aim to finish your main meal a good 3 hours or so before bed. For many people, that means wrapping up dinner by 7. If life means you have to eat later, make the late meal the lighter one. Lean protein and vegetables rather than the fried heavy plate. That's it. You're not on a diet. You're just giving your heart a head start on the night. Habit 2, the blood pressure pill. Now the big one. This is the section I most want you to hear, because it's where the most confident advice on the internet has it backwards. You've probably seen the videos. A serious voice tells you that if you take your blood pressure medication in the morning, it may no longer be working when your body needs it most, and that you should ask about switching to the evening, often citing something called the Hygia chronotherapy trial as strong scientific evidence. It sounds authoritative. It sounds like inside knowledge. Here's what those videos don't tell you. First, the background that is solid. Blood pressure follows a daily rhythm. It's meant to dip by around 10 to 20% while you sleep. Some people don't get that nighttime dip. They're called non-dippers. And non-dipping is genuinely associated with higher cardiovascular risk. That part is real, and it's why researchers got interested in the timing question in the first place. So far, so good. The problem is the leap from there to so take your pill at night. That leap leaned heavily on the Hygia trial, which reported that bedtime dosing nearly halved the risk of major cardiac events. And that result set off alarm bells among cardiologists, not because they wanted it to be false, but because the effect was so enormous that it didn't fit with anything else we know about how much these drugs actually lower risk. When a single study claims a benefit several times larger than every comparable trial, that's not a reason to celebrate. It's a reason to look closely. They did look closely. The concerns about how Hygia was designed and reported became serious enough that the journal which published it issued a formal expression of concern. And then came the study that really settles this for most people, the TIME trial. It was large, more than 21,000 patients in the UKE, and it did the clean version of the experiment, randomly assigning people to take their usual blood pressure medication either in the morning or in the evening, then following them for years. The result? Essentially no difference. Major cardiac events happened in about 3.4% of the evening group and 3.7% of the morning group, a gap small enough that it's considered no real difference at all. On the back of evidence like this, the International Society of Hypertension now advises against routinely telling people to dose at bedtime. So let me translate that into plain English. For most people with high blood pressure, the best time to take your pill is the time you'll actually remember to take it every single day without fail. Consistency beats cleverness. The morning versus evening debate that those videos treat as settled science is, for the average person, close to a coin flip. And the coin the research landed on says, it doesn't much matter, so pick what you'll stick to. Now there are real exceptions, and this is exactly the nuance those channels flatten. For certain specific situations, some people with poorly controlled nighttime blood pressure, or certain conditions like kidney disease or diabetes, a doctor might deliberately choose evening dosing for good reasons. That's a decision made by a professional for an individual, looking at that person's own readings. It is not a rule you apply to yourself because a video told you to. Which brings me back to the promise I made you at the start, and I want it to land hard here. Do not move your blood pressure medication to a different time of day on your own. Some of these drugs and diuretics, water pills in particular, are timed the way they are for reasons that have nothing to do with your heart and everything to do with your quality of life and your safety. Changing the timing yourself can cause problems, not prevent them. If this section made you curious, good. Write down one sentence. Is the timing of my blood pressure medication right for me? Ask your doctor or pharmacist that at your next visit. That conversation is free, it takes 2 minutes, and it's the correct way to act on everything I just said. That's the difference between a channel that hands you a scary rule and one that hands you the right question. Habit 3. The snoring. Nobody investigated. Let's talk about the snoring, because this is one where the popular videos are directionally right, even if they inflate the numbers. There's a condition called obstructive sleep apnea, and in older adults, it is both common and badly underdiagnosed. To give you a sense of scale, studies suggest that something like a third of middle-aged men and roughly a sixth of middle-aged women meet the criteria for it. And among people who already have heart conditions, the rates are far higher. Most of them have never been tested. They just know they snore, and they assume snoring is harmless background noise. Here's what's actually happening during an apnea episode. The airway briefly collapses and you stop breathing for 10 seconds, sometimes much longer, and this can happen many times an hour, all night. Each time your oxygen dips, your brain registers a mini emergency, and it jolts your system awake enough to restart breathing. Adrenaline goes up, heart rate spikes, blood pressure surges, then you drift back down, and it happens again. Your heart is being repeatedly startled while the rest of you sleeps, night after night, for years. Now let me correct a specific number you'll hear elsewhere, because this is where honesty matters. Those videos love to say sleep apnea triples your risk of a heart attack. When you look at the actual meta-analyses, the more defensible figure is closer to roughly double the cardiovascular risk. Still very significant, still worth taking seriously, but not the precise threefold that gets thrown around without a source. Untreated sleep apnea is strongly linked to high blood pressure and to atrial fibrillation, an irregular heart rhythm that raises stroke risk. That much is well established. I'll be equally honest about the treatment because here the popular videos overpromise. The standard treatment is a CPAP machine, a mask that keeps your airway open at night. What CPAP clearly does, and the evidence for this is good, is improve daytime tiredness, quality of life, and blood pressure. What's less certain, and you'd never know it from other channels, is whether CPAP actually prevents heart attacks and strokes. The large trials on that specific question have been mixed, so I'm not going to tell you CPAP will save your life. I'll tell you the truth. If you have sleep apnea, treating it will very likely help you feel dramatically better and will help your blood pressure, and it may help your heart. And feeling better and lowering your pressure are more than reason enough. The signs worth acting on: loud snoring, yes, but also waking up gasping or choking, morning headaches, a dry mouth, needing to urinate several times a night, and the big one, feeling exhausted despite a full night in bed. If a few of those sound familiar, the move is simple. Ask your doctor about a sleep study. And one free thing you can try tonight while you arrange that: if you snore, sleeping on your side instead of your back can genuinely reduce airway obstruction for many people. It costs nothing and it might help. It's not a substitute for getting properly evaluated, but there's no reason not to start. Habit 4, skipping the evening glass of water. This is Robert's habit of not drinking after dinner, and it's the one where I have to be the most careful with you, because the popular advice here is partly reasonable and partly, for some viewers, genuinely risky. The logic people use makes sense. They stop drinking in the evening so they won't wake up at 2 in the morning needing the bathroom, which interrupts sleep, and for an older person raises the risk of a fall on the way there. Completely understandable. And there's a kernel of real physiology behind the counter advice. When you're dehydrated, your blood does become a little thicker and flows less easily. Overnight, your circulation naturally slows and you lie still for hours. It's true that the hours around waking are a well-documented peak time for heart attacks and strokes. So the story the videos tell, thick blood, slow circulation, morning danger, therefore drink a glass of water before bed, has a certain neatness to it. Here's where I have to slow down and be honest, because neat stories are exactly what this channel exists to check. The specific claim that a bedtime glass of water prevents heart attacks is not well proven. It's a plausible sounding chain of reasoning, not a demonstrated result. General good hydration is sensible advice for most people, but this one glass will stop a nocturnal heart attack is going further than the evidence goes, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise just because it makes a tidier video. And now the warning those other channels leave out entirely, which is the part that actually matters. If you have heart failure or kidney disease, or if your doctor has told you to limit your fluids, then just drink more water at night is the wrong advice for you, and following it could make you worse. For those conditions, fluid restriction exists for a reason. This is a perfect example of why one-size-fits-all health advice on the internet is dangerous. A tip that's harmless for one viewer can be harmful for the next. So here's the responsible version. If you're generally healthy and you've just been avoiding fluids out of habit, a small glass of water in the evening is fine, and staying reasonably hydrated through the day is a good idea. But if you have any heart or kidney condition or any fluid limit, follow your doctor's guidance on fluids over anything a video, including this one, tells you. When a general tip collides with your specific medical instructions, your instructions win. Every time. Habit 5, the bedroom that's fighting your heart all night. The last one is the one that surprises people, because it seems too simple to matter, the temperature of your bedroom. Your body sleeps best and your cardiovascular system rests best, within a fairly narrow temperature band. Push outside it in either direction and your heart ends up doing quiet work all night that it shouldn't have to. Too warm, and your body spends the night trying to shed heat. Blood vessels dilate, heart rate stays a touch elevated, you sweat and lose fluid, and just as importantly, your sleep gets shallower. You spend less time in the deep stages where a lot of overnight recovery happens. Too cold. And the opposite. Your vessels constrict to hold your core temperature, which nudges your blood pressure up and makes your heart pump against more resistance. Neither extreme is a catastrophe on its own, but for someone already managing high blood pressure or heart disease, a little harder, all night, every night, adds up. The evidence here is moderate rather than dramatic, so I'll frame it modestly. A comfortable, stable bedroom temperature supports better sleep and keeps your cardiovascular system in an easier state. Most guidance lands somewhere in the range of roughly 18 to 22 degrees Celsius, about 65 to 72 Fahrenheit. You don't need to obsess over the exact number. You need to avoid sleeping somewhere that's clearly too hot or genuinely cold. One thermostat adjustment, and it costs you nothing after that. That's the 5. Now let me put them together into something you can actually use. None of this should feel like a list of new things to worry about. Put the pieces together, and what you've actually got is a simple, calm evening routine. Here's one version of it. In the early evening, aim to finish your main meal by around 7 if you can. A balanced plate, not an enormous one. Giving your heart a few hours to do the digesting before you sleep. If you have to eat later, make it the lighter meal. Take your medications at whatever time your doctor has set, the same time, every day, reliably. If the timing of your blood pressure pill is something you've never actually discussed, write down that one question to raise at your next appointment. Don't change anything yourself in the meantime. Give yourself a genuine wind down in the last hour or so, a short walk, a book, a quiet conversation, and ideally a break from bright phone and tablet screens which keep your mind switched on longer than you'd like. As you head to bed, set the room to a comfortable temperature, and if you're generally healthy, keep a glass of water within reach. And if you snore or wake up gasping or exhausted, do 2 things. Try sleeping on your side tonight, and put "Ask about a sleep study" on your list for your doctor. That's the whole routine. Notice what it doesn't include. It doesn't include changing a single dose or time of any medicine on your own, and it doesn't include any tip that overrides instructions your own doctor has given you. Those 2 guardrails are what separate a routine that helps from advice that backfires. Everything so far has been about slow, background risk, the kind you manage over months and years. I need to spend 30 seconds on the opposite, the signs that mean stop watching and get help now. Call your local emergency number. Don't wait. Don't drive yourself. Don't sleep on it. If you or someone with you has chest pain, pressure, or tightness that doesn't ease, pain spreading to the arm, jaw, neck, or back, sudden severe shortness of breath, a cold sweat with nausea, or any sign of a stroke, a drooping face, weakness on one side, or slurred or confused speech. In those situations, minutes matter more than anything I could tell you. None of the 5 habits in this video is a substitute for that. They're about lowering the odds over the long run. If your body is signaling an emergency tonight, The only correct response is to get real medical help immediately. So that's the evening. But here's what struck me while I was checking the research for this one. The biggest risk in that whole list wasn't the late dinner or the warm bedroom. It was the thing millions of people have never been tested for. The airway that quietly collapses all night while everyone assumes the snoring is harmless. It's a system nobody checks, and it turns out it's not the only one. If you found this one useful, the best thing you can do is send it to one person over 60 who's never connected their evening routine with their heart. And if you want the plain English fact checks, the confident narrator videos skip, this is the channel for it. I'll see you in the next one.